Alright, we're trying to do the roof paneling. As a note, the difference between the 118 wheelbase and the 136 wheelbase is I can probably get away with just 2 sheets of plywood for the ceiling on the 136. It really needs 1 sheet for each gap between the rafters if you're doing it that way. But with the smaller van, I can probably get 1 sheet 48 up and have the joint here, and then one place 48 over and have the joint there. That's what I'm hoping to be able to do. We'll find out for sure, but for now the goal is I can definitely get 1 sheet of 48 to go here. We're going to do a full piece 68 inches across. That brings it right to the edge here, basically with the foam, which is essentially level with this edge. And we've got these, there's a piece of foam sitting in there now. It's been sitting in there for about an hour and a half. We got some silicone, 100% silicone, and we got some double-sided tape, really strong stuff. And every second rib here we mixed up between the double-sided tape and the contact adhesive, or the 100% silicone. And the idea was that the contact, the double-sided tape would hold it up initially and then provide pressure against the silicone, and ultimately when it dries it would all be good. But ultimately the panel's going to hold it. So just talk briefly about this little end piece. One of the problems I've always had with the van is, you know, you can use the ribs here, and that's what we did in the 136 tall roof van. We used the ribs, but then when you go from there and go to the back of the van, what the hell do you do? Now I can't really show you the construction of it because it was just such a cluster front yard. It kind of required, I got 2 pieces of 3/4 poplar about 5.5 inches wide. I had to just mark a pencil line, shape it, so it's got quite, the flat one across has got quite intricate little cut, follows the roof line, and the horizontal one wasn't too bad. It just needs a little cut out where the door latches go. But what ended up being a bit of a cluster is there's 2 different angles. The angle, nothing is square in this damn van. So on the top one there it was 8 degrees, I tried to make wedges. On the bottom one it was 6 degrees, I tried to make wedges. And there's so many holes in that back panel that I really couldn't find what I would call a kosher, good, high quality, high, you know, like a quality kind of way to screw it in. I ended up just getting some really 3/4 bolted birch, putting it in the holes and holding them in place while I put screws in, so they kind of just slid in the holes. But in a way, I'm trying to tell you, you're going to have to kind of figure out this right angle thing yourself. It's an intricate little mess to some degree. For me, it's going to be the most complicated part of the roof. Well, at least take a couple of pictures so you can see, or take some video so you can see what we did in a way, but mounting it to the metal is just tricky. I ended up screwing the bottom in first with 8 screws in pre-existing holes. I made those 6mm wedges so that at least it tried to sit flat. Once I had that in, then I rigmarolled around until I got the right shape on the vertical piece of wood. And then I just tried to put wooden spacers in the big holes in the metal until I could get a screw mounting. And then we put 2 LED lights in the back there, low profile LED lights, with the wire right now just hanging at the end. But it's just that back corner piece is just one of those things that you're going to have to rigmarole around, figure it out, and come up with something that you're happy with. I'm happy with the way it is, and it provides a nice flat level surface for me to have the roof panel come up against, and then eventually a small trim edge will go along there. So we're using Granger 32 FX31. That's basically the small holes. 32 FX33, that's the large holes. We haven't bothered using any hex rib nuts in this van. I might have to drill a couple of holes here, but right now we've hardly drilled any holes, period. Less than 6 holes so far. We're using all the existing. The 32 FX31 take a 1032 screw. The 32 FX33 rib nut takes a 1/4 screw. So that's what we're doing. So right now I'm putting the rib nuts in, line up the holes that are the same all the way down. There is 4 holes that line up the same, and then you may have to use a couple of these rectangular ones unless you want to drill a hole exact. I find that this one goes okay in the rectangular hole, the smaller one, especially for a roof panel where it's not holding much. We do have one complication in this 118 wheelbase. We bought it with the beautiful super bright LED light. It's such a nice light that we don't want to waste it. This is the light that comes for the 2020 model. It's a single light, but it's so bright it lights up the whole van. We want to keep it, so I'm going to make a little cutout and make it fit in the roof. It doesn't affect our first half of the roof panel. It's only going to affect when we come past the bed area. So we're going to try and make that fit and put it back in. So we're going to have this light plus 6 custom LED lights. So this will come on and off when the van door opens. We can also turn it on manually, and it runs off the car battery, whereas the 6 little LED lights, about 2.5 inch dome or whatever it is we bought, they're going to run off the Yeti inverter. So that's where we're at right now. Alright, so this is one of the foam inserts for there's 4 sections in the 118 wheelbase. There's the section towards the back, then there's a very skinny middle section, then there's another middle section, and then there's the front. So there's going to be 4 little foam pieces for this van. What we've done here is this pretty well measures 15 inches crossways, but there's an angle cut. So right now there's 2 angles going in like that. So at the wide part it's 15, and at the skinny part at the bottom it's about 14.5. But I just took my saw and did a 15-degree angle cut. So again, it's 15 across here, and then it's 68 long. That's about as wide as I can get one piece across the van. And then I'm cutting out these 2 little notches. There's a little 2 inch by 3/4 inch notch here, and there's about a 3.5 by about 5 inch notch here. And those 2 notches, they've got to be repeated on the other end here. Those 2 notches are for the framework that goes up over the van, the ribs, and that's so we can go around them and this can sit against the roof of the van. So we're going to cut the same little notches on this side. It's about the same, so I'm just going to use the template. Doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just using a blade. Hopefully that should roughly fit. Alright, so we're test fitting this piece of foam. We did have to make an adjustment based on the original cut I told you. I told you it was 15 at the wide part. That turned out to be a little bit tight. So I took a 1/4 of an inch sliver off it. And then there was also another little problem. Towards the outer edges, there's an overlap on the rib where it's wider. So we had to cut some little notches in. But you can see it's sitting in there nicely now at the 68 inches length. So now we're going to glue it up there and put these temporary supports, and let it sit for a couple of hours, and then we're ready to put the first back half of the ceiling panels in. Alright, we got the ceiling panel up in the rear half and it's actually looking good. And we decided that we want to utilize this beautiful LED light that came with the van, even though we're installing 6 of our own. And part of the reason is it's handy at coming on with the door, and it's handy that it runs off the battery for some things, and it's very bright, so there might be times, you know. And it's not a bad looking light, this brand new LED light. So I figured out I can incorporate it. Now, basically our ceiling panel construction works this way. We're trying to minimize drilling holes, and we're trying to minimize impacting the height, because this is only the low roof. And I'm 6'2" and it's already, I have to hunch over a little bit. But so this panel went across in one piece, the back, and it's 68 inches across is the maximum we found we could go. And it presents some hiccups. This one is higher than all the others. So this one and the corner, very corner one, are higher or lower than these middle ribs. So you have to space them about 3/4 of an inch, the middle thing, so that you end up with a fairly flat line. And you'll see what I mean in a minute. I actually cut this for this side, but the camera can't see here. So we're just going to pretend that this is all for over here. So you can see my basic principle is this is going to go in here with the split being right down the middle of the reinforcement piece.
The way that we're essentially doing this is the two ceiling panels meet in the joint down the middle of the rib. We cut a larger hole in the ceiling panel as a clearance hole for the screw to pass through. Then when we put the seam piece across the joint, we have a smaller hole for the screw to pass through.
And then I do that slightly larger, and then the way that we actually hold the panel up is once it's joined like that, we have a reinforcement piece or a joiner piece that goes over with the holes cut very tight, and that's what clamps down and seals to make the roof look pretty. So, and then we use this pink foam right in the middle here. It's about the same height, it's a little bit thicker than the rib, so it means it ends up squeezing up against this when you tighten it all down. So, like I said, this is taller than this, so when we do this, you can see that if I do it, it's going to go up like that. See how it's crooked, exaggerated? So we're going to have to space that to keep it, we have to space down here to keep it the same height. So that's kind of the basic construction of our roof setup. Pink foam in the middle, and then the joins down the middle, rib nuts inserted in the ceiling. Now we did have to, because we're deciding to utilize the light, I did have to drill an extra hole here, and I've done that as best as I can without having metal filing. So I have to drill another one here so that we have a screw mount close to the light, because the way this light works is it would split the panel in half, so the panel's going to come up against it, so I need a mounting hole close to the light to hold the panel up. And what I'm also going to find that I'm going to need when the time comes is some sort of mounting out here, which I'm going to insert a metal, aluminum metal strip in here, and with a rim nut installed. We'll show you that in a second. But so we're going to split this part into two panels, When you do the holes, vacuum out as much of the filings as you can. Just try not to leave any metal filings anywhere that you don't want to. You don't want to have rust and stuff later. So that's where we're at right now. But it's all looking good. I also had to, it's hard to see in the video maybe, but this little wire that supplies this light, I had to kind of pull it a little bit and then stretch it and tight. It's a tight squeeze, but it will fit between the gap here so that I can have it out here without being squashed by our ceiling panels going in. Alright, because we're leaving this light in and splitting it in the roof in half, there's a riv nut hole here that I haven't put a riv nut in. I'm going to have to put in, but this is kind of the principle I did anyway with making a clearance hole, because the join line is right down the middle. I'm just going to let this light drop down a little bit so I can get this scrap material in here. And I've drawn a little pencil line, and what I'm about to do is a little spacing hole so that the screw can go through without hitting the wood. Alright, so now we've cut a little half notch circle right where the existing hole is, and those existing holes happen to be perfect for our 1032 rib nuts. See? That's going to go right in there.